Thank you, Steve and US Master Swimming. I'm a little nervous because it's not my first language in English. Sorry. First, thank you very much to invite you to share with us our experience. But the first thing to remember, it's always to remember that we never pretending to stay on your experience to plan the next events. Okay, you have to review every year. Okay, 9 months before. First thing that we do is to review what's happened last year about medical rescue team, medical team, and everything. Okay, it's with all the volunteer, and for sure we have a medical team. We have a clinic, okay, on the site. We have a building. The building is built for us, okay. It's two level building. We have a medical team and medical clinic in this building with nursery, doctor, and all the kit. The only thing that we don't do in this clinic is the surgery, okay. You understand why? Mr. Miller, no, normally Mr. Miller is in your events. After that, okay. Okay, and what's it's important to review, and with as Mr. Rath said. And to have the coordination between all the emergency okay services. That's maybe the police department, the hospital, the 911 operation. You know, you could have a 911 call, but if you don't know where the ambulance have to go to pick up the swimmers, it's impossible to have the time limit to rescue the swimmers. Our top priority, okay, on the lake. The race director, top priority is to know where is the swimmers. We have 7 kind of race, okay. We have a 1, 2, and 5K, and we have it's not too hard to secure, but we have a 10Ks for the young swimmers. We have a 10Ks for the FINA circuit, FINA marathon, and we have the FINA 32K Grand Prix. And if I spoke about the 32K, it's different, okay, from 10Ks. If you have a lake, big lake, large lakes, 32K, you have to know where is your swimmers before if you want to rescue him, okay? It's very important. And for that, many years ago, we installed on every boat that follow we have a boat, escort boat for every swimmers, okay? If we have 25 swimmers, we have 25 boats with then follow the swimmers, but each boat have a GPS system unit, okay, to know where is the swimmers and where is the medical team, where is the rescue team, and with our system of communication, we can rapidly go where's the swimmers, then and we have to rescue. Okay.
Thank you, Eric. And Ralph, the question to you is, and we'll maybe speak about the Waikiki Rough Water Swim, but you also do the North Shore Challenge and many other events from Ala Moana to Sandy Beach to North Shore. What do you look for in a race, especially before races, especially if you have a review of a permit? What kind of interactions does your staff do with the race director or their safety staff?
As Steve mentioned there's more than just the Waikiki rough water swim that happens in Hawaii. Malcolm runs a number of events on Maui. There's this North Shore Swim Series that occurs on the North Shore of Oahu, which is a series of 4 races. There's the Duke's Ocean 1 mile swim that happens during the week of the Duke celebration in August. So the permit process that Greg explained is real similar to what we do in Honolulu, with the exception of we don't run the events, we don't provide the lifeguards unless the event organizer wants to hire off-duty lifeguards. And there are professional lifeguard companies in Hawaii that actually do events. Okay, the U.S. Triathlon, the Olympic trials were held 2 years ago in Honolulu, and they hired a private company to do it, and they did it very well. You know, one of the concerns that we have in races and swims is the level of the participants' abilities. We've been out on boats, specifically at the rough water swim, where people, you know, not just in 2003, but people just aren't prepared for that distance or those conditions. We have literally people going backwards. Okay? So in one situation, we were in a boat. We came up to a woman who was obviously not going to make the 2-hour cutoff. Said, "Come on, lady, get on the boat." No, go away. Your boat smells. You know, we don't want to be here. And I said, "No, really, lady, get on the boat. It's for your safety." And she says, "If I get on the boat, I won't get a T-shirt." So, you know, what's motivating people? Okay, now the people that do swims are not all world-class swimmers like Shelley. Okay, you have everyday people that are doing these events. Maybe somebody that did the Honolulu Marathon and wants to add the rough water swim to their, you know, certificates on their wall, and they perhaps walk the marathon. Okay, so they think they can do the rough water swim. It's going to be a cakewalk. Okay, so the level of people that are participating in the events really concerns us. Okay, and then everything else goes back to the pre-planning and the prevention efforts that Greg alluded to.
Thank you, Ralph. Jim, you do a lot of stuff, not only here in the Bay Area, but also around the world. We're actually going to skip because I think you've got a really interesting topic here. And Chris had mentioned the utilization of volunteers. So how would you, in all your expertise, what's the best way to prepare volunteers that are maybe Boy Scouts, that may be actually doing a race either in San Francisco Bay, on a river, and all the other 26, I believe, races that Pacific Masters Swimming do? How would you advise a race director to advise the race volunteers, including those safety people on the water, to prepare themselves?
Good morning. Thank you. It's an honor to actually be here and be able to have open water safety come to a forefront after years of saying, I'm kind of worried about what we do. When I spent 6 years as the open water safety chairman for Pacific Masters Swimming, which there's some people in the room who've done that job also, and we sanction actually every single swim that Pacific Masters Swimming does, not that happens in the Bay Area. And so the sanction process, you know, of course, includes getting permits and safety planning and in and outs and EMS on site and all these things. So we felt like we were doing a really good job. Where I always have felt where the Achilles heel has been is in the volunteers we utilize to monitor and watch our swimmers. I have huge concerns about the ability. You know, in 20 years ago, it was, okay, how many people here own a kayak? Okay, you're all going to be our safety crew. And bring your kayak out and come on out, and we'll set you around on the course and watch everybody, and we should be good. You know, we have 30 more kayakers this year than last year. Well, you know, exactly. You know, you want to do it right, you know, put them through USLA open water safety training. Make them lifeguards, make them, and I'm not here because, you know, I think the first thing I'd tell volunteers onshore and on the water is to make sure they understand they're one team. You know, this is one team and a team approach to this event. Like anything that's performance-based and has inherent risk, you know, getting everybody on the same page is critical in understanding the mission. But, you know, life-saving professionals, Dan McCormick, East Bay Regional Parks, known Dan for 20 years. You know, you don't swim in East Bay Regional Parks and do an event without paying their staff to lifeguard it. And bless them. The cost is, although that could be cost prohibitive, and a really cool 2-mile, 2-person relay has kind of gone by the wayside because of the supposed affordability of that. I'm going to stand here today and say, you know, open water swimming is not a right, it's a privilege, and sometimes you're going to have to pay a little more to do it safely. And so I think the mindset may have to change a little bit in regard to what we charge and what we do if you really want to get serious about safety and be able to have qualified, safe people there. Knowing that, you know, this can happen in 3 different scenarios. You can have pros, you can have volunteers, or my preferred method, I want pros and volunteers. You know, every extra set of eyes with a little bit of training, knowing what to look for, not having to respond, not having to provide advanced care, not having just being there. You know, response time is critical in any kind of immersion event. We know that. We know that people who spend more than a minute and a half unresponsive in the water, the chances of being able to do something viable with that person and their health and safety, security in the long term gets threatened as time goes by. So time is always an enemy. So more bodies would be good. I really think, though, that if you use volunteers, the first thing they need to do is they need to understand their role as a critical keeper of people's lives. And that needs to be emphasized to them that you're the only person for maybe 50 yards, 100 yards here. Your job is to watch and to maybe call for help. Maybe you can't provide care, but you can get care there and be the extra set of eyes. So I think they need to understand their role. And then I think a really tricky thing to teach a volunteer is how to stay out of the way but still be there, right? I mean, has anybody ever been hit with a kayak paddle when they're swimming? It does not feel good, you know? I remember doing Trans Tahoe one year, and it was when it was still longer. It was still 13 miles before they shortened it, and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon with a great group of swimmers, and I'm watching this boat next to me that's supposed to be next to me going up in the air 10 feet and hitting and slamming, and I kept swimming away, and they kept following me. And I'm like, guys, I'm 20 yards over here. It's okay. You see me, I see you. Just don't get so close. You know, you're worrying me. So how to be there but not be in the way is another thing that you really need to teach people to do. It just doesn't come naturally. They want to be engaged, so they get too close. Very unsafe. I think recognition is huge. You know, what's the difference between a tired swimmer, a distressed swimmer, a potential drowning victim, and the recognition of those phases? Unfortunately, nobody goes to victim school. So you can tell people, oh, wave your arm. You know, I'm working on I'm doing a drowning investigation right now. A guy had a seizure in a lap lane, 1 splash to the bottom. You know, that that happens in a group of 500 people. You know, so recognizing the idea of continual surveillance and good surveillance where you're looking, moving heads, eyes focusing. You know, your eye can only focus on 1 degree of movement. Everything else is movement and color and movement and as your field spread out. So actually being able to focus, look, people to people, zone to zone, critical. I think teaching them the difference between a critical event and a non-critical event. You know, someone with a toe cramp, you need to roll over, you need to stretch, or your calf cramp, you need to roll over, you need to stretch your cramp, I need you to relax. That's very different than somebody who is maybe having you know, a health condition, a heart attack, a pain in their chest, something like that. Learning, you know, when people roll over on their back more than 3 times, that's something to worry about, right? You know, get to that person when you see them stop and look like they're stopping. The other thing that I worry about is so they're volunteers, so they're not used. When you lifeguard, the one thing you learn, I remember sitting in beach towers for years, and you know, someone would come up and talk to me, and they'd start talking to me, and I'd talk back to them, and they'd be like, why aren't you paying attention to me? Well, we're engaged in a conversation, but I just can't look at you. So how do I teach a volunteer to stabilize somebody, but to keep their eye on everybody else? You know, that becomes kind of critical again. Analyzing and acting and communicating your actions, you know, to the big eye when they talked about, you know, binoculars on a shore as part of ICS. ICS, that was great. I wonder if who did, Catherine did the ICS. I hope that qualifies for my ICS 300 training I have to go to next week. But it's kind of critical to me that the communication with the big eye and a communication system that actually works. And You know, recently in Pacific, we said, okay, if we're going to have volunteers in kayaks at these events, how about we buy them a rescue tube, huh? They're not lifeguards, so, you know? So we got yellow rescue tubes and not red ones. And that way when they raise it, we know it's not a lifeguard, it's a volunteer. And that rescue tube just drags behind them, because I've always been very, very worried about the kayak. I can't get out of the kayak, I don't know how to swamp it, I don't know how to get back in, I don't know how to stabilize someone on it. What good is it as a rescue vehicle unless it's designed? They're designing some now for that. It's not. So, but I can hand anybody a rescue tube, probably 500 or more rescues in my younger days. I can hand you a rescue tube and you grab it and you pretty much calm down and I get you stabilized. You know, nose up and breathing is really what we're looking for, right? So, the assistance and then the transfer of assistance, we talked to them about how do I, once I got somebody, how do I get assistance and how does that assistance and how do we transfer people? I worked at the boathouse in Oakland. They were all CPR certified. I'm like, okay, so someone falls off a boat and you have an incident. Do you guys know how to put them into a whaler? Have you ever done a lift into a whaler? Have you ever figured out how you're going to do CPR or get a stable platform on a bench in a whaler? What are you going to do? So what to do with these people once they find them is critical to me. And then I think my biggest thing about volunteers and races in general and watching people is who's running drag. And that's kind of a river term for rafting, but there's always one raft in the back. And we put our best, most experienced people in the back raft. And they basically herd everybody up the river. And when I was talking to Dan and people earlier, you know, putting the best people in the back, having someone in the back who's got a good grip, staying with the people who, and not always, people in the back don't always need the most help. They might just be older and maybe not going as fast as some other people. So the ability to discern that, and those are all things I worry about with water volunteers, and it's just so nice to be here on Saturday morning. Hallelujah.
Thank you very much, Jim. I'm going to ask the same question to all four gentlemen, and then we'll open it up to questions. And the question is, in all your years of experience, what has surprised you during a race? Is there something that has surprised you and that you've learned from? And Jim, I'll put you on the spot again.
I think I was most surprised when I had to use an ice chest as a bailer for a bow rider boat. Don't ever take a bow rider boat across Lake Tahoe. I think I'm more surprised by the fact that it can't happen to us. You know, thank you, Chris, for your statistics. 1 in 18 million, God bless USLA. That's an amazing statistic when you understand that 1 in every 140,000 people who participates in aquatic activity drowns in our country. So what you're beating a huge statistic there. I think I'm most surprised by the people who think it'll never happen to them. And that would probably be my greatest surprise. Don't think it can never happen to you. I've known people who've worked in aquatics for 32 years. 1 week before they retired, someone finally drowned in one of their agency facilities. Someone else, 30 years, 6 months before they retired, someone drowned. Some of the best people I know. So everybody needs to understand, you can't control somebody's heart rhythm. You can't control somebody having a stroke or seizure. You can't control. There's a lot of things you can't control. There's a lot of things you can't. Be ready for that because it can happen to anybody, anytime, during any race. And that's what we really need to embrace.
It's same thing for us. The act of God on the lake of 32 Ks is we are always worried about that. Okay, we don't know what's happened for years in the lake of the 32K. The weather condition change on the lake rapidly. For example, last year, in 2 weeks, we lost 6 Celsius degrees. Okay, for the water temp, and we don't plan to about variation of this kind of water temp. Last year, we are surprised. We have a new event. After 56 editions, we have a new event. Normally, Lake St. John is maybe 30 feet deep, okay? And we have 5 beautiful big rivers to fill the lake. And normally, the starting point is in the river, okay? And normally, the river is colder than the lake, okay? And last year, because there are no snowing enough the winter before, there are no raining in the spring, the river was hotter than the lake. And when normally the swimmers, Karen, Paul, you know, you swim in the colder water in the river, and when you arrive in the lake, it's comfortable. But last year, it's not the same situation. When the swimmers come in the lake, frozen. And it's a surprise. Huh? Every
Well, keeping with the same theme, my biggest surprise, I think, in being a race director for 13 years for big shoulders has been hypothermia. Lake Michigan is one of the largest freshwater lakes in the world, and people don't appreciate how fast the water temperature can change. I put on our website in our entry form, water temperatures can vary from 60 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and people are like, come on, narrow it down, what are you doing? And I said, no, honestly, it can, and it can change in a matter of 2 days. If you spend any time on the lake at all, you know, if we get a big wind coming out of the southwest, it pushes all the warm water away from Chicago over to Michigan, and it creates the upwelling from the bottom, and the water temps will go from 76 to 59 overnight. So that's always been a big surprise. But the bigger surprise to me is the years when we're blessed, we have amazing glassy water, and it's 72 degrees, and the sun is shining. Oh, thank the Lord, we're not going to have to worry about hypothermia. Wrong. I assumed that most people were sufficiently endowed with thermal layers to withstand that, but as we've been talking about, the introduction of more and more varied people to our sport, primarily triathletes who have zero body fat, really lowers the threshold of dealing with the cold water and it increases the rate of hypothermia. And we've seen people go into the hospital on days when the water was over 72 degrees, and I was shocked. And you know, the number of blankets we had, the amount of hot water, all those types of precautions that we try to prepare in advance for, we weren't quite up to snuff because we weren't really thinking it was going to be that big of a problem. Now, we've learned from that. You know, one of the things that we're fortunate about in talking about race design in general, but it helps with hypothermia and maintaining adequate control of the course in general, are wave starts. We've taken a page from the triathlon book in that regard. We don't let any waves go that are bigger than 125, 150 people. We can manage it better. We can keep a better eye on people. We have a better sense of where people are in the water than if we had a herd start like they do at La Jolla. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us feel like that's real open water swimming. If you can't handle the start of 900 people charging into the water, go back to the pool. But honestly, from a race director standpoint, that's one of the things I think we have to step back and look at and say, are we adequately managing this? Can we control for all the conditions like hypothermia if we have that many people starting in a race at once? So things like that have surprised us, and we've tried to adjust accordingly.
Thanks, Chris. After 30 years of doing this, nothing surprises me anymore. Seriously. You know, we dealt with tsunami last week. We've dealt with multiple rescues. We've dealt with people going down in the Molokai Channel. And incidentally, you can take ICS 1 and 200 online. You can do it online. Okay, but you got to go to the class. Yeah, you got to go to class for this. Incident command structure is really important, and I can't overemphasize the need for that. I think one of the things that we've learned, though, over the years of dealing in lifeguarding, in public service, in management of a 250-person lifeguard operation, we used to think that, you know, every tourist that got off the plane was stupid and dumb. And tourists don't know it. You know, you left your common sense at home, and you know, blah blah blah. You know, people aren't dumb. People aren't stupid. And I think we've learned that. People need to be educated, and people need to be given good information so that they can make a decision of whether or not to do something. Okay. You know, signs that say don't do this and don't dive and don't jump and don't do this, I don't think they're very effective. And this is after 30 years of dealing with things like that. I think it's important to give people information, accurate, timely information, and enough information so that they can self-assess and make their own decisions. And I think if we've learned anything, that's one of the general things that we can share with you. Thanks.
Thank you. Now I'd like to open up to questions, and I'll pass the microphone over there. If you can come here and just...
My name is Karen McGregor. I realize time is of the essence, so I have 5 topics, points of consideration that I will quickly try to go through and then sit down. First of all, a physician physical sign-off is something where U.S. Masters might have a checkoff list that could be used. Possibly it could be mandatory for ages greater than 60 or 70, or as a voluntary item where a swimmer can take to a physician and hand them and say, do you see any problems here with me? Second of all, water quality checks. It was just brought up earlier. Personally, I can attest to problems with water quality, both, well, not necessarily chemical, but bacterial. I participated in an open water swim in which afterwards, and I don't get ear problems. I had an ear infection in which I was on antibiotics, not for 10, but 15 days. Third item, air quality. Now, that may be an item if you're in an urban setting, but there could be some situations in which air quality should be considered, and I'm thinking specifically of the Persian Gulf. Now, we've talked about the warm waters there. Actually, water temperatures there can exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit. But what's not known is that the level of air pollution, specifically ozone, can be extremely high, much higher than what you would experience in some of the worst days in the LA basin. Fourth item, some sort of a checkoff protocol for meet directors of open water matches. In other words, you have a list of things that need to be signed off before there is a go. Airline pilots have to do it before the airplane goes off. Engineers have to sign off it before a rocket goes off. Fifth item, we talked about information being available on the internet. U.S. Masters may want to have a certain place on their website in which you can go to and easily find out atmospheric and water conditions, not only for that point in time, but maybe a 5-day forecast. Now, those of you that have done surfing out there, you may, and I'm not advocating this one site, but a good example of it is surfline.com. Now, this particular site utilizes observations, weather models, ocean models, and satellite data. And not only can you find out conditions for beaches in the United States, but you can also go to foreign countries. And my favorite thing is to go down and check out beach conditions in Brazil. Thank you.
Well, Jim, you want to handle that? We got medical issues, water quality, air temperature, USMS sign-off, and water.
My attention deficit disorder says I'm not sure. Actually, I think those are all valid points to sit and address them in the time we have. I think a medical checkoff is a great idea for anybody participating, and generally in a waiver, any kind of waiver will say, you know, I understand if you should consult a physician before participating in these kind of activities. That doesn't mean they do it though. As for weather and conditions, yeah, looking at the forecast for the time, and event organizers going back and looking at the history, Ralph's current models and atmospheric models, and you can get data back at the same place and the same point in time for, going back 20 years through NOAA. So that's another great resource. Dirty water, my only advice is don't swim in the bay at Cabo when you sail down there and think, oh, now I'm going to go for a nice swim because I got the worst bacterial infection in my sinuses I've ever had in my life. So water quality, the Tijuana, the river, after working down there, I can relate to that. So I think I hit them all on them. There's a lot of questions and all good points.
Chris, I did want to ask you, at the big shoulders, do you do any pre-testing? You work with the city on water quality?
The Chicago Park District does daily testing of water quality throughout the swim season, and they post it on their website. And beaches are closed periodically based on that. I mean, the biggest problem in Chicago, anyway, is antiquated sewage systems in certain municipalities. When we get a massive rainstorm, they'll actually open the locks and dump water into Lake Michigan, and that basically puts a freeze on any open water activity for at least a 3 to 4 day period until the lake can turn it over. They're working to adjust that. The biggest challenge, frankly, with water quality is the science of water testing that's available right now. Because if you test, the way it works right now is that they'll take a sample, they'll run it back to the lab, they'll culture it for 24 hours, and then they'll tell you, hey, yesterday when you were swimming, yeah, that was bad water. You're sick. Doesn't. Right, right. And yeah, it doesn't account for turnover, and it doesn't account for current conditions. And the Park District in Chicago, anyway, is working to pioneer more immediate feedback testing that's available so that you actually know what kind of quality you're swimming in. The other problem is that what they test for isn't necessarily truly a human risk factor. They're tracking certain kind of bacteria that tend to thrive in the conditions that bacteria that are harmful to humans thrives in. So again, this is just a testing anomaly that's being worked out as time goes on.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. In the interest of time, we'll call this session. You've got Ralph Goto over there. You have Jim Wheeler over here. You have Eric, and you have Chris. If you ever have any questions, I know there's many other questions, but these are the gentlemen. They have experience. Like Rob Butcher said, exchange emails, talk to them, and get to know each other and share your information.